There's a moment that happens to almost every ambitious person on Earth, and nobody tells you about it until it's already destroying you. It doesn't feel like failure. It doesn't feel like laziness. It feels like something much scarier. You wake up one morning, look at the exact same goals that used to excite you, and you feel nothing. Not sadness. Not even frustration. Just a strange, hollow silence where your drive used to live. And the terrifying part? Everyone around you assumes you're just being lazy. Your parents think you've lost interest. Your friends think you're making excuses. Even you start to believe it. That maybe you're just weak, undisciplined, not built for success like other people are. But here's what almost nobody tells you. What you're experiencing has a name. It has a biological cause, and it is happening to some of the most hard-working, high-achieving people on this planet. Right now, in this exact moment, while you're watching this video. By the end of this video, you're going to understand something that took scientists decades to fully map out. Why your brain, the same brain that once pushed you to work 14-hour days without complaint, suddenly refuses to move. And more importantly, I'm going to show you the exact science-backed way out. Not just push through it, not have more discipline. The actual mechanism and the actual fix. Because here's a secret almost nobody talks about. The people who recover from this fastest are not the ones who force themselves harder. They're the ones who understood exactly what was happening inside their own mind and stopped fighting it the wrong way. If you've ever stared at your to-do list feeling like it's written in a language you no longer understand. If you've ever felt guilty for resting, but even more exhausted when you tried to work. Stay with me. What I'm about to explain will change how you see every unmotivated day for the rest of your life. Let's start by killing a myth that has quietly ruined millions of lives. Burnout is not laziness. Burnout is not a lack of discipline. Burnout is not a character flaw. Burnout is a measurable, physiological state. And the World Health Organization has actually classified it as an occupational phenomenon, describing it as a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that hasn't been successfully managed. But here's the part that will surprise you. Burnout doesn't just happen to people who work too much. It happens to people who care too much for too long without enough return. It's not about the hours on the clock. It's about the gap between how much you're giving and how much you're getting back, emotionally, mentally, and physically. Think about a phone battery. Every notification, every scroll, every app running in the background. It drains the battery even when you're not actively using the phone for anything important. Now imagine a battery that's been draining for months, sometimes years, with barely any real charging happening in between. Eventually, it doesn't matter how good the phone is. It simply won't turn on until it gets what it actually needs. Your brain works almost exactly the same way. And here's the twist that catches so many people off guard. Burnout usually doesn't happen during the hardest, most stressful period of your life. It happens after, once the pressure finally lifts, and your body, which had been running on adrenaline and forced discipline, finally lets itself feel the exhaustion it had been suppressing the entire time. This is why so many students crash right after finishing their final exams. Why new employees fall apart 3 months into a job, right when things were supposedly getting easier. Why some of the most disciplined, high-performing people you know suddenly, mysteriously, can't seem to do anything at all. The 3 warning signs. Almost nobody notices psychologists Christina Maslach and Susan Jackson, who pioneered burnout research decades ago, identified 3 specific signs that separate burnout from ordinary tiredness. And I want you to pay very close attention here because you have probably felt at least one of these without ever having a name for it. The first is emotional exhaustion. Not just physical tiredness, but a bone-deep depletion where even small tasks feel like they require energy you simply don't have. Answering a text message feels heavy. Making a decision about what to eat feels overwhelming. The second is depersonalization. And this one is the strangest, most misunderstood symptom of all. It's a growing sense of detachment, cynicism, or emotional distance from the very things you used to care about. A teacher who once loved her students starts to feel numb toward them. A job seeker who once had big career dreams starts referring to their own future sarcastically, almost mockingly, as if they've given up believing in it. The third is a reduced sense of accomplishment, a persistent feeling that nothing you do actually matters or makes a difference, even when, objectively, you're still capable and still producing results. This is the cruelest part of burnout. It doesn't just drain your energy, it convinces you that your effort was never worth anything in the first place. If even one of these sounds familiar, I need you to hear something clearly. This isn't you being broken. This is a well-documented, predictable stage your mind enters after prolonged, unrelieved pressure. And understanding that difference between I am lazy and I am burned out is the first step toward actually recovering. Here's something most people never learn, and it changes everything once you understand it. Burnout isn't your mind failing you. It's your mind protecting you. Badly, clumsily, but protecting you nonetheless. Deep inside your brain sits a small, almond-shaped structure called the amygdala, your built-in threat detector. For most of human history, its job was simple: detect danger, trigger a stress response, help you survive. A predator in the grass, a rival tribe approaching, real physical threats. But your amygdala doesn't actually know the difference between a lion chasing you and a boss sending a 11 p.m. email marked urgent. To your ancient threat detection system, chronic stress, deadlines, financial pressure, fear of failure, constant self-comparison registers as a continuous emergency. Not a single spike of danger, but a slow, unrelenting siren that never fully turns off. And here's the part that explains everything. Your body was never designed to sustain a stress response for months or years at a time. It was built for short, intense bursts. Run from the danger, survive, then recover. When that stress response gets stuck in the on position for too long, your body starts making a desperate trade. It begins shutting down non-essential functions, motivation, creativity, emotional warmth, even your ability to feel joy, to conserve whatever energy remains for basic survival. This is why burnout so often comes with something that feels almost like depression, but isn't quite the same thing. Your brain isn't sad. Your brain is rationing. It has decided, on a subconscious level, that dreams, ambitions, and long-term goals are luxuries it can no longer afford to fund, because it's too busy trying to keep you simply functioning day to day. The cortisol trap. There's a hormone at the center of all of this. Cortisol, often called the stress hormone. In short bursts, cortisol is incredibly useful. It sharpens focus, increases alertness, prepares your body for action. But under chronic, prolonged stress, cortisol levels can remain elevated for extended periods. And research has linked sustained high cortisol to disrupted sleep, impaired memory, weakened immune function, and, critically, reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex, the exact part of your brain responsible for motivation, planning, and willpower. Read that again. The very brain region you need most to push through burnout is the exact region that chronic stress damages first. This is why telling a burned-out person to just try harder is like telling someone with a broken leg to just walk it off. It's not that they won't. On a neurological level, in that moment, it's genuinely harder for them to. Now here's where it gets interesting, because burnout isn't only caused by working too hard. There are hidden causes that catch even careful, self-aware people completely off guard. 'Cause 1. The purpose gap. Some of the most severe burnout doesn't happen to people who are overworked. It happens to people who are working without meaning. Research on workplace psychology has consistently found that a sense of purpose and control over one's work is one of the strongest protective factors against burnout. sometimes even more important than the actual number of hours worked. This explains something strange. Why a person working 60 hours a week on something they deeply believe in can feel energized, while someone working 30 hours a week on something meaningless can feel completely drained. It's not the hours. It's the hollow feeling of investing your limited time and energy into something that doesn't seem to matter. Cause 2. The approval trap. For high achievers especially, burnout often has a sneaky second ingredient: the need for external approval. When your sense of worth becomes tied to constant achievement, grades, promotions, praise, recognition, you start running on a kind of borrowed energy that isn't sustainable. You're not working from a full internal tank anymore. You're working to avoid the feeling of being seen as not enough. And fear-based motivation, unlike purpose-based motivation, burns through your reserves far faster because it's constantly triggering that same ancient threat response system we talked about earlier. Cause 3. The myth of rest equals weakness. There's a quiet cultural lie many of us absorbed growing up, that rest is something you have to earn, and that resting before you're done is a form of weakness or failure. This belief is one of the most reliable predictors of burnout because it pushes people to override their body's warning signals again and again until eventually the body simply stops sending polite warnings and forces a full shutdown instead. Cause 4. Invisible labor. This one is rarely discussed. Burnout doesn't only come from your job, your studies, or your visible responsibilities. It often comes from the invisible labor underneath everything else, constantly managing your emotions to appear fine for others, suppressing your real feelings to keep the peace, carrying silent worry about money, family, or the future, while still showing up and performing normally every single day. This invisible weight drains the exact same limited reserve of energy as any physical task. But because no one can see it, no one, including yourself, gives you credit or rest for carrying it. Here's a counterintuitive truth that could save you months, maybe years of unnecessary suffering. The instinct to push harder when you feel unmotivated is almost always the exact wrong move during burnout, even though it's the move nearly everyone makes first. When you're simply lazy or unmotivated in the ordinary sense, pushing through often works. A short burst of discipline gets the momentum going, and things start to flow again. But burnout isn't ordinary unmotivation. It's depletion. And depletion doesn't respond to pressure the way ordinary resistance does. Imagine trying to squeeze more water from a sponge that's already completely dry. No amount of squeezing harder will produce anything. You'll just damage the sponge further. This is exactly what happens when someone tries to grind through real burnout. Instead of recovering, they dig the hole deeper, often triggering a much longer, more severe crash weeks or months later. This is why so many people describe a strange pattern. They force themselves to push through exhaustion for a while, seem to succeed, and then completely collapse, sometimes for weeks, right when it seems like they'd finally gotten back on track. That's not bad luck. That's the predictable, biological cost of ignoring depletion instead of addressing it. Now the part you've been waiting for, the actual path back, not motivational fluff. A real, structured approach. Step 1. Diagnose before you fix. Before doing anything else, get specific about which type of depletion you're dealing with, because the fix is different depending on the cause. Ask yourself honestly, is this physical exhaustion from lack of sleep or overwork? Is this emotional exhaustion from suppressing feelings or people-pleasing? Or is this a purpose problem, where you're technically capable but nothing feels meaningful anymore? Misdiagnosing this is one of the biggest reasons people try the wrong solution and stay stuck for far longer than necessary. Step 2. Radical, guilt-free rest. This isn't about a lazy Sunday. This is about deliberately, unapologetically doing less than feels comfortable for a defined period, days, sometimes weeks, without treating it as a moral failure. Real recovery requires giving your nervous system evidence that the emergency is over. You cannot think your way out of chronic stress while your body is still stuck in survival mode. You have to first prove to your body, through actual behavior, that it's safe to stand down. Step 3. Rebuild through tiny, meaningful wins. Once basic depletion starts easing, motivation doesn't return all at once. It returns gradually. And it's rebuilt through small, completed actions, not big, overwhelming goals. Choose one small task, ridiculously small if necessary, and complete it fully. This isn't about productivity. It's about giving your brain proof, again and again, that action leads to completion. Slowly restoring the neural pathway between effort and reward that burnout had worn down. Step 4. Reconnect with the why. Go back to the actual reason behind your goals, not the achievement itself, but the meaning underneath it. Not get a job, but build a life where I'm not constantly anxious about money. Not get good grades, but become someone capable of solving real problems. Reconnecting with the deeper why reactivates purpose-based motivation, which, as we covered earlier, is far more sustainable and far more resistant to burnout than fear-based or approval-based motivation. Step 5. Build in recovery. Before you need it, the final most important shift. Stop treating rest as something you earn only after collapsing. Build small, regular recovery periods into your normal routine. Not as a reward, but as basic maintenance, the same way you wouldn't wait for your car to completely break down before ever changing the oil. People who avoid repeated burnout aren't the ones who never work hard. They're the ones who learn to work hard in cycles, full effort followed by genuine recovery, rather than a single, unbroken sprint that eventually forces a full stop. If you're in the middle of this right now, staring at goals that used to excite you, feeling guilty for not having the energy you think you're supposed to have, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not weak, and you are not behind. You're depleted, and depletion isn't a character flaw. It's a signal. The version of you that used to move fast isn't gone. It's just waiting for you to stop punishing it long enough to recover. Rest isn't the opposite of ambition. It's what makes ambition sustainable. If this helped you understand what you're going through, subscribe. Because next time, we go even deeper into rebuilding the mind after it's been pushed too far. I'll see you in the next one.